Beautiful. Well, good evening, everyone, and so lovely to see you all. It was definitely a very eventful afternoon with a total eclipse of the sun. Whoever saw it was actually quite a sight to be had. To see the full, I don't know. First of all, it was just very interesting. Instantly, suddenly got dark. The lights on the car went on automatically. It was really eerie and strange, but beautiful at the same time. It was also I found the light to be very different than regular sunlight in the sense of it was a different hue. It was actually beautiful, and of course to see the aura of the sun around the moon was beautiful. So I hope that you all had that experience. You saw it. Otherwise, you have to wait for another, what is it, 162 years. So make sure you put it in your calendar. I think it's around 2250 or something like that. So make sure you put that in the calendar for the next full solar eclipse.
You can actually you'll see in Iceland next year.
Oh, okay.
Iceland, Greenland, and parts of Russia.
Okay.
And I think Spain in another 3 years.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not planning to go to Spain for a bunch of reasons. I'm not in whatever, but we won't go there. That's not the reason for
Yeah.
for this lesson. So we're right now on chapter 11 of Shmuel Aleph, and really this is where the last one um we had the first king of Israel to be anointed, and now actually what we're going to see is this will be a story that really demonstrates Shaul's ability to really assume leadership, to help his countrymen, to show him how he's almost modeled around a judge, and we also see how the Spirit of God rests on him. In other words, he's not just another individual. He's one that also has the Spirit of God with him. He has God backing him up. He has the Spirit behind him as well. And it actually takes place in three different places, as we will see. It starts off on one place, moves to another, and returns really back to the first place. So without any further ado, let's continue with chapter 11. Vaya'al Nachash Ha'amoni. And Nachash the Ammonite marched up Vayichan al Yavesh Gilad, and he besieged, or he attacked, he encamped upon Yavesh Gilad. Vayomru kol anshe Yavesh el Nachash, and they pleaded with him. The citizens of Yavesh Gilad pleaded with Nachash, Krat lanu brit v'navdeka. Please, let's make a pact with you. Let's make an understanding, and we will serve you. In other words, we'll be subjected to you, but let's make some kind of pact. You notice, by the way, what's the guy's name?
Nachash.
Nachash. What's Nachash in Hebrew? Nachash is a snake. So you can either take it literally that the guy's name was Nachash, or it's almost like a derogatory name, or like in terms of an if you can say a nickname of what he represented. So he was a snake. He was somebody who was evil and vile to the people of Yavesh Gilad. Vayomar alhem Nachash Amoni. Nachash the Ammonite told them, Bezot echrot lachem, this it will be my pact. Bin kor lachem kol ein yamin, on one condition, that I will gouge out your right eye. Vesamtiha cherpal kol Yisrael, and this I shall humiliate the entire people of Israel. And it was considered a great humiliation when somebody gouged somebody's eye. You have to understand, in the olden days, if you had any type of challenge, whether it was physical or if it was mental, you were seen as lesser or deficient. So here they were basically made half blind, and half blind, the worth was, of course, not the same thing as having full eyes. It was basically a sign of control and a sign of humiliation. So he says, I'm going to make a pact only on one condition. If I will gouge out all the right eyes of the inhabitants of Yavesh Gilad. Vayomru elav ziknei Yavesh, and the elders of Yavesh responded to him and said, Heref lanu shivat yamim, give us 7 days of rest, of respite, v'nishlecha malachim bechol gevul Yisrael, so that we may send messengers throughout the territory of Israel. Ve'im ein moshia otanu ve'atzanu elecha, and if we are not receiving any aid, nobody's going to come to our rescue, then we will surrender you. So in other words, they're giving kind of pact. No, we do not want this, but we'll give us seven days to regroup, and once we regroup, if we have no chance, then we'll surrender to you. Vayavo malachim Givat Shaul, and the messengers came to Givat Shaul. Vaidabru hadvarim boznei ha'am, and there they spoke the report of what is happening. Vaisu chol hamet kolam vaifku, and the people who heard this, who were there, cried for the calamity that will soon or that might take place to Yavesh Gilad. Ve'ineh Shaul ba acharei habakar min hasadeh. Saul was just coming back from the field, arriving from taking care of the needs of the cattle. Vayomer Shaul, ma la'am hazeh. He yifku. He saw the people suddenly all being sad, all crying. So he asked them, "Why? What's going on? Why are you all weeping?" Vaisaprulo et divrei anshe Yavesh. And so they told him about what is happening, the situation of the people in Yavesh. Vatitzlach ruach Elohim al Shaul, and the titzlach comes from the word hatzlacha, which means successful. Successfully, the Spirit of God rested upon Shaul. Keshamot hadvarim ha'ele, as he was listening to the story that the malachim, the spies or messengers were telling. Vayichar apo me'od, and this angered him up greatly. So in other words, as he's listening to this, he's infused successfully with the Spirit of God. What did he do? Vaikach tzemed bakar vainatchehu. He took a yoke of oxen and cut them into pieces. Vaishalach bechol gvul Yisrael, and he sent it to all throughout the territories of Israel. Biyad malachim lemor, in the hand he gave the same messengers that same responsibility to go and inform all the territories in Israel. Asher enenu yotze achrei Shaul v'achar Shmuel, ko ye'aser liv karo. Whoever does not join in and come and follow Shaul and Shmuel, just as those pieces, just as that oxen was cut into pieces, so shall all of the livestock of those who do not join will be made. In other words, you're going to lose your livelihood. Vaipol pachad Adonai al ha'am, and the fear of the nation, in other words, of all the territories, of what might become of their stock was terrifying for them. And so vayetzu keish echad, they all joined in Shaul and Shmuel as one person. So in other words, he gave them ultimatum. He who does not join, their cattle, they're going to lose their livelihood, basically. So everybody joins in. Vayifkedzem bevazek, and they all joined up in Bazek. Vayuvnei Yisrael 300,000 v'ish Yudah 30,000. And in total, there were 300,000 men from the Israelites, and just from Judah was 30,000. Interesting number, by the way. Does this number look familiar to anyone? Do you remember the reservists that were called up to get were 300,000? So interesting to note this. Vayamru lamalachim habaim. The messengers who had come were told, Kotomrun leish Yavesh Gilad. Go in front of us, go before us, and you shall speak to the men of Yavesh Gilash as follows: Machar tieh lachem teshua kechom hashamash. Tomorrow, when the sun grows hot, roughly in the afternoon, you will find salvation. Vayavo malachim vagidu l'anshei Yavesh vayismachu. And lo and behold, the messengers get there because they're obviously much faster than 300,000 people traveling. They traveled ahead of them. And when the people of Yavesh heard, they rejoiced and they were glad. Vayimru anshe Yavesh, Machar netze elechem vasitem lanu kechol hatov be'enechem. The men of Yavesh then told the Ammonites, tomorrow we will surrender to you, and you can do to us whatever you please. Everybody understands what's happening? So now the people of Yavesh, knowing that there's going to be salvation, they are telling they're playing a game and telling the people of Yavesh they're telling the Ammonites, fine, we give up, but knowing that there is help coming from tomorrow. Vahimi mochorat, and the next day, Vayasim Shaul eta'am shlosha rashim. Saul divided the troops into three different encampments. Vayavo b'toch hamachane b'ashmor taboker, and at the morning watch they entered the camp, the Ammonite camp. Vayaku et Ammon ad chom hayom, and they struck down the Ammonites until the afternoon. Vahi hanisharim vayafutzu, and all those that survived, all those Ammonites that survived, they escaped and ran off and scattered. Velo nisharu vam shnaim yachad. No two were left together. In other words, they were not even a pair. They all ran in different corners. There were not even enough of them that remained that would be able to protect one another. They were all single runners. Vayomer ha'am el Shmuel, and the people yelled over and cried out, or with gladness told as one voice to Shmuel, Mi ha'omer Shaul yimloch aleinu. Who was it said that shall Shaul be king over us? Tnu ha'anashim unmitem, hand the men over and we will put them to death. Who was it said shall Saul be king over us? In other words, who were the people that had any doubts whether Shaul should be king? Who had doubts? Show us, and we will put them to death. In other words, they're saying in the negative. They're saying there's no question about it. Shaul is our king. Vayomer Shaul lo yumat ish bayom hazeh. Shaul then retorted and said, no one shall die today. Ki hayom asa Adonai teshua b'Yisrael. For today, God has brought a great victory to Israel. By the way, this is a little bit of a, if you remember the story from last week, where there were people that were outside that did not bring forth gifts to Shmuel and to Shaul when Shmuel anointed Shaul. Do you remember that at the end? That there was, so this is kind of in reference a little bit of those doubters, those people who were questioning Shmuel whether Shaul should be king. And here Shaul again is saying, don't worry, it's not I'm not at all slighted by them. No one's going to die today. God has brought great deliverance. Vayomer Shmuel el ha'am. Shmuel then instructed the people. Lechu v'nelcha Gilgal. Let us all come up to Gilgal. Unchadesh sham hamelucha. And there we shall finally inaugurate the monarchy, our king, as there was unity, there was a consensus now that Shaul should be the first king. Vailchu chol ha'am ha'Gilgal. The entire nation went up to Gilgal. Vayamlichu sham et Shaul, and there they declared Shaul finally. This is the official inauguration, and there they declared Shaul to be king lifnei Adonai b'Gilgal, before God So this was a religious also component to it. Remember, I mentioned the people wanted a ruler of flesh and blood, but still, this is not totally like the other nations. There is a component of God still having his hand or playing within the monarchy. And Vaizbechu sham zvachim shlamim lifnei Adonai. There they offered sacrifices of well-being before the Lord. Vaismach sham Shaul v'chol anshe Yisrael ad meod. And there was a great jubilation, great celebration, not only for Shaul, but of course for the entire nation as well. This was a very short chapter. Anybody has any objections if we continue for chapter 12? No?
No.
So let's continue. Chapter
Yes,
12. Yes.
Where is Bezel? Bezel? What is it? Bezel? Bezek?
Bezek.
Yeah, and where and Gilgal.
Okay, so let me show you. I'm not sure if I have I believe Gilgal. Sorry, I'm just gonna it'll give me just one tiny second. I believe I have it here. I didn't what is I believe I have the map here. Let me show you. I don't think Bezek I have, but I believe I do have. Hold on.
The questioning of the leader
Yes.
makes me feel like similar to what's going on right now.
It's also for them, you have to understand this is a total change of course. They didn't necessarily know who here it is. They didn't know who they were. It's somewhat understandable. The only difference is that it's showing a lack of also belief in Shmuel, who was the leader as well. And so if he says this is whom, it's a slight. So let me show you where
Oh, there's Gilgal.
Gilgal is right here. So just a little bit. So it's almost and part of it you have is if you remember the way that the Israelites came in from Joshua, they came up from Egypt. So Egypt is like somewhere down, right? You see where Egypt here is. They traveled this way, kind of, and then entered this way, and then there's Jericho right here, which they came in that way. Gilgal always plays an important role. It was one of for a long time. It was the capital and the religious head. Okay, especially now Gilgal, you'll see it coming up, but quite often. I don't see the other, but I think it's near because the whole story takes place. I'm going to look down the second map in this region right here. This is the region where why? Because look what the Ammonites are on this side. You see it?
Yes.
So in other words, this is east of the Jordan River. The Jordan River runs this way. Okay, this is the Jordan River.
Right.
So part of it, if you remember, a part of Reuven and Gad and Chatzi Shevet Menashe, half of Menashe were on one side, but this story mainly takes place between Gad and Reuven, as the Ammonites were coming
There's
to.
Bethel. Oh no, that's Bethel.
Yeah,
Thought it
that's Bethel. Yeah, Gilgal is right here. This is
Yeah.
Gilgal. Sorry, it's hard to. Let me just undo. Let me just undo that. Where is that? Annotate and let me undo it. Gilgal is there. Do you see it? Just above Jericho, right here.
Mhm.
Okay. as in the map up on top. So it's that area, almost from the Dead Sea. You see it? The northern part of the Dead Sea, all the way up to above it to somewhere near Yericho, somewhere there in that region. And I suspect that the city that Farley are looking for is somewhere around there as well. Okay,
But is that a body of water where
which
Jericho is? Because it's in
no,
blue.
that's Benjamin's. That's just Benjamin's. The section that was Benjamin's province, if you want to call it territory. It
There's no.
looks like but it's not. It's light gray. Here, if you want to look at it a little bit,
Okay.
here, tell me if this makes it a little bit clearer. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not water. Really, the
Well-
only water is the Kinneret up on top, Kamat over here, and down at the bottom, Dead Sea. That's really the only. And of course, you have the Mediterranean on one side, and at the bottom you have the Red Sea as well. So, but these are the main bodies of water that we have in Israel. Let's continue.
So once Saul became the king, what happened vis-a-vis the high priest? Did Shmuel became the high priest? Was he a Kohen to start with? What is that situation?
No, Shmuel was not, although he did grow up with Eli, if you remember, however, he was not. This is quite interesting, actually, that you say this, because if you look at it, for a long time, there was a little bit of a division. There was Moshe. I'm going back now to Moses' times. There was
Right.
Moshe, and we did have the Kehuna as well, and they worked in tandem. Later on, Joshua, less so with Kohanim. There's not really mention of Kohanim that often. It was more, that was and for a while also, it's very unclear as to where the service was. It kept on moving in different places. And part of it was practically because the Israelites were conquering the land. So they were in constant warfare, so to speak, as they were conquering the land. Obviously, they couldn't just stay in one place. If it was under attack, or if they needed to attack, it would be moving. So there's a couple of different places where the religious capital was, if we can use that nomenclature. And then later on, it really becomes Gilgal, and then there's a couple of other places as well. Megiddo, it becomes also important. Shiloh also becomes important, and then finally it goes to Yerushalayim. Right after David brings it to Yerushalayim, and that's where it becomes, and that's the final spot. But until then, there are some pockets of stories where the Kohen or the Kohanim are the leaders, but that was really during the time of Shoftim, when they were the spiritual leaders. So depending on how it was, but it was not in the same way as it was in the desert. But we see a little bit of a separation of if I can say, church and state, and particularly now with Shaul, you see it a very, very big move from that. So there's the service in terms of the religious aspect. The religious aspect becomes the Navi, that there's almost always a prophet that is the right hand of the king. If you want to look at it that way, you'll see it later on with David. You have Natan, and there's always the king always has a godly mouthpiece, so to speak. And that again is emblematic of the fact that the monarchy was at the end of the day established by God, or at least the king was determined by God. When we had wicked kings, or those kings that did not follow God's the rules of Judaism, then there was none, or he had false prophets. And we'll see it later on, but that's later on when we get into the different how do you call it, the different kings that fought, etc., how they took on it. Quite interesting. Great question. So let's continue with chapter 12. Okay. Vayomer Shmuel el kol Yisrael, and Shmuel tells the entire crowd of the Israelites, Hine shamati v'kolchem, I listen to you. Lechol Hashem artem li v'amlich alechem melech. When you when you came up to me and you cried, you said, please, we want you to bring forth and put a king over us. And I listened to you. V'ata, hinei hamelech mitalech lifnechem. Here before you is the king that will lead before you. Vani zakanti vasafti. Now I have become old. I've grown old, and I'm safti is turned gray or have aged. Uvanai hinam itchem, and my sons are still with you. In other words, are still here. Vani hitalachti lifnechem min urai yom hazeh, and I have been your leader from youth until this day. Hineni anuvi neged Adonai v'neged meshicho. Please, here I am, testify before me in the presence of the Lord and in the presence of his anointed one. Et shor mi lakachti v'chamor mi lakachti. What have I asked in return for my service? I did not take not a single donkey, nor nothing have I, or an ox, nothing have I taken from anyone, or not for my service. In other words, I did not do this to become rich for my own betterment. Vetmi ashakti, vetmi ratzoti. And who am I? Who did I defraud, or from whom have I robbed? This is, by the way, a haftarah. Umiyad mi lakachti chofer, and from whom have I taken a bribe? Valim enai bo vashiv lachem. So that way I should look the other way. And if you have any claim that I've done it, I will return any of these things, whether it's an ox that I've taken from someone, a donkey, I robbed somebody, defrauded anyone, or bribe anything, I'll return it. Who? Come forward to me. Vayomru lo ashaktanu velo ratzotanu. And the crowd responded, true, you've not defrauded us, nor have you robbed us. Velo lakachta miadish meuma. You have not taken a single thing from anyone. Vayomar lehem. And Shmuel retorts and says, Ed Adonai bachem. Let God be the witness today. Ve'ed meshicho hayom hazeh. And let his anointed one be the witness. Ki lo metzatem be'adi me'uma. For you have not found any wrongdoings on my end. Vayomer Ed, and they responded, yes, they are witnesses. So in other words, basically they say this is true, and they second the motion. Vayomer Shmuel el ha'am, and Shmuel tells the people, Adonai asher asa et Moshe vet Aharon, God who appointed Moshe and who appointed Aharon, Vasher helat avotechem eretz Mitzrayim, and who brought you, your fathers, out of the land of Egypt. Vata, and now, hityatzvu ve'ishafta etchem lifnei Adonai, come and I shall judge you, or I shall declare for you, recite for you, before God, et kol tzidkot Adonai asher asa etchem v'tavotechem. Let me recite, let me record to you again all the great kindness that the Lord hath done for you and for your fathers. And he goes back. Kasher ba Yaakov Mitzrayim, when Jacob came down to Egypt, Vaizaku avotechem el Adonai, there your forefathers cried out to the Lord. Vaishlach Adonai to Moshe vet Aharon, God sent Moshe and Aharon. Vayotziu et avotechem Mitzrayim, and there they brought your forefathers out of the land of Egypt. Vayoshivu b'makom hazeh, and they settled here in this land. Now what happened in return? Vayishkechu et Adonai Elohehem. But your forefathers, those who were rescued, they forgot the Lord their God. Vayimkor otam biat Sisra, sar tzevach Hatzor, v'yad Plishtim, v'yad melech Moav, v'elachamu bam. And as they forgot about God, God sold them out to the king Sisra, who was the Sar Tzvach Hatzor, the head of the military commander of Hazor, and also into the hands of Plishtim, and also into the hands of Moav. and they were in constant strife and in constant battle and war. So what happened? Vaizaku el Adonai. And once they had all this trouble, they started to cry out. They cried out to the Lord. Vayamru chatanu, and they realized that they have sinned, and they yelled out, "We are guilty, chatanu, ki'azavnu et Adonai." They recognized that they left their ways, and that we deviated from following God. V'navodet ha'be'alim v'tashtarot, and we worshipped the god of Baalim and also the Ashtarot, which is also a type of a tree. V'ata, and now, hatzilenu miyado v'enu v'navdeka, please just deliver us from our enemies, and we shall serve thee. So really, in short, the last two psukim are really the encapsulation of pretty much the entire Shoftim, the book of Shoftim, which we finished earlier last year. Really, that was the cycle of not following God, being punished for it, crying out, and getting somebody who's going to a shofet who's going to save them from that situation. Okay.
Yossi, did you say Ashtaroth also refers to a type of tree?
There it was a type. The Baalim and Ashtarot. It was a type of a tree-like a deity. Yeah.
Ashtar was a Babylon, or I mean, widely worshipped.
Yes,
It's a
both.
fertility god.
Baalim, but and some of it was a part of it was the ritual was putting a tree somewhere, and then the tree also became, yeah. But yeah, it was in that region. There was also Dagan, as we know with Plishtim. They had the how do you call it? Which some either say it was part of a fish. Others say Dagan is actually the different the crops. So it depends on how, but I showed you that it was actually they found literally figurines of, if you remember, figurines with half man half fish type of like a mermaid, literally like a mermaid. So don't think it was Walt Disney that came up with that. Okay. Anyways, the idea is that they followed different religions. They followed different deities. What happened? Vaishlach Adonai et Yerubal v'et Bedan v'et Yiftach v'et Shmuel, and God sent all these saviors. He sent Yerubal, and then he sent Bedan, and then he sent Yiftach, and then he sent Shmuel, myself, v'yatzel etchem yad avichem saviv, and God rescued you and saved you from all your enemies that surround you. Vateshvu betach, and finally you dwelt in security. What happened? Vatiru ki Nachash melech bnei Ammon ba aleichem. But when you saw that Nachash, king of the Ammonites, was advancing upon you, vatomruli, and what did you say? You said to me, Lo, ki melech imloch aleinu. And they said, no, let's have a king reigning over us. V'Adonai Elohechem alkeichem. But don't you get it that ultimately God is your king? So I want to just go back a little bit. The story of chapter 10, of chapter 11, which we read with Shaul and the king Nachash. It's over a period of time. So some of it is actually giving us a little bit of a background. That was what's happening, and then Shaul comes in. So it was for a number of years, of course, even before Shaul came. So what Shmuel is saying is, once again, did you not follow the pattern that happened beforehand? When you guys you don't follow God's ways, bad things happen, you cry out, God saved you. Which God? He's the ultimate king. But what do? You're asking God to give you another, you ask me to give you another king. Who's your real king? God is your king. And Vata, and now, here, the Lord has set the following person to be your king. Vine Natan Adonai Elohim Melech, and here, behold, God has bequeathed your quest and has given you a king. Im tiruet Adonai, if you will see, you will observe and revere God. V'avadetem oto shmatem bekolo, and you worship God and obey Him. V'lo tamru et pi Adonai, and you will not speak ill or downgrade God. V'item gamatem, v'gam amelech asher malach alechem achar Adonai Elohechem. You, along with the king, which God has chosen to be the king over you, will follow God. In other words, you will do well. However, ve'im lo tishmeu bekol Adonai, but if you don't listen or obey that which the Lord has said, umritem et pi Adonai, and you sour with your mouth that which is godliness. In other words, you speak poorly, you discuss and you belittle God. Yad Adonai bachem uvavotechem. No, that God will strike you just as He did your forefathers. Don't think that just because now you have a king and that God gave you this king, that this gives you the right to not follow the ways. Do you remember you remember the whole premise of asking a God, as I mentioned beforehand, was particularly when Shmuel wanted his two sons to go and be rulers, and they were wicked, just as the sons of Eli, who were the Kohen, Stephen, you asked beforehand, who was really the guide at that time, was a Kohen right before Shmuel. It was a Kohen that was the leader. And so what they wanted someone almost outside. They didn't want that leadership to go from one to the other. They saw a kind of pattern where once one leader's children take over, they abuse their power. But what are they setting? They're just starting the starting point different. But usually in a monarchy, what happens? Who reigns after a king?
Son of the king.
The son of the king. So it's the same thing. What are the like? It's almost, he's kind of like he's saying it's exactly however you want to look at it. It won't change who you want your ruler to be, as long as you follow God's will. That's it. He's spelling out very clear. It won't depend on the leader. God always sent a leader to you to save you, because you ultimately started the whole process of calamity. That's really what I think Shmuel is trying to highlight to them. It all depends on you. You don't have to have any issues. Just follow God's ways. Gamata. Now, at present time, hityatzvu ra'u. Listen up. Et hadavar hagadol hazeh asher Adonai oseh leinechem. Look right now what a marvelous thing God has going to do before your very eyes today. Halok tzir chitim hayom. It's the season of the wheat harvest. Ekra el Adonai veiten kolotu matar. I will pray out to God, and you know what He'll do? He will send out thunder and rain. Ud'u, and you shall know. Ur'u, and you will see. So not only that you will just know, but you will also witness. Kiratchem rabah asher asitem b'nei Adonai lisholachem melech. You will understand that your demand to have a king over you was not a good idea. So He's going to make him right now a sign. Vaikra Shmuel el Adonai. Shmuel calls out to God. And lo and behold, Vaiten Adonai kolot matar bayom ahu. The Lord brings forth thunder and rain that day. Vayrach chol ha'am me'od et Adonai ve'et Shmuel. And there, the people feared and were in awe of God and of Shmuel. V'amru chol ha'am el Shmuel. And so the entire people cried out to Shmuel, Hitpalel be'ad avadecha el Adonai Elohecha v'lo namut. Please pray on our behalf so that God shall not kill us. Ki asafnu al kol chatotenu ra'ah lishol lanu melech. For we added above all that which we've already been committing, we've added even further to our sins. And we understand that it was an ill-advised, or it was not well thought out for us to ask from God to place a king over us. Vayomer Shmuel el ha'am al tirau. But then Shmuel says, you know what? Do not fear. Atem asitem et kol hara'a azot. You have indeed done all these wicked things. However, al tasuru me'acharei Adonai. No longer shall you turn away. Do not turn away from God any further. Va'avadetem et Adonai bechol levavchem. The only thing you need to do is just serve the Lord with all your heart. Velo tasuru ki acharei hatohu. And do not turn away to follow that which is worthless. Asher lo yo'ilu velo yatzilu. That which you will not create any positivity and will not profit, nor will it redeem you. Kitohu hema, for they are nothing. They're worthless. In other words, don't follow something that is meaningless. Does it sound like the Shema? He's using same lingo that comes from other prayers in terms of the relationship that we have with God. Ki lo yitosh Adonai et amo ba'avur shmo hagadol. Remember, for the sake of his great name, the Lord will never abandon his people. Ki ho'il Adonai lasot etchem lo le'am. For God is determined. This is one of his missions, to make you his nation. Gam anochi chalil ali mechatol Adonai. As for me, God forbid, should I sin against the Lord. Mechadol itpalel ba'atchem, and refrain from praying for you. V'horiti atchem b'derech hatova v'hayshara, for I will continue to lead you, to instruct you on the right path. In other words, I'm still here for you. I'm not changing my allegiance, even though he's displaying his discontent with the request, which he's done on a number of occasions. He's really trying to ingrain the fact that just because now they have a king doesn't mean that the king is responsible and the people are below, and now God has to go through a command. In other words, if the people are sinning, who's responsible for you? It's the king. No, you are still responsible for your actions. Ach, Yeru et Adonai. The only thing you need to do above all is you must fear and revere God. Vavadetemoto be'emet bechol levavchem, and serve him faithfully with all your heart. Kireu et asher higdil imachem. See the greatness in terms of chassadut, in terms of kindness, which he has dealt you. V'im hare tareu, for if you persist on doing bad, gamatem gam malkechem tisafu. Just remember that if you turn and start to do wickedness, you, along with your king, you're one and the same. You're not separable. You, along with your king, will also be wiped away. Any questions?
I have.
Yes, Parla.
So, reading all of this, all the people are threatened about following God. But the fact is that if you can really believe in God, it does give you a lot of strength. For example, these hostages, I was watching a documentary with some of the ones who've come out, and one of the girls' mother was saying that she prayed before her daughter got out, that she was praying to God that she had the strength, and that would get her through this horrific time by believing and by praying. So
Yeah.
my point is that it's a lifetime of trying to get there. Just that you can't just believe it because it's in the book, right?
Right. So it's very similar. So if you look at it, as I'm saying beforehand, what Shmuel in a real synopsis of chapter 12 is what I was telling you beforehand, that Shmuel is telling them very clearly, you wanted a king, but the monarchy is going to be also paired off with spirituality. You cannot separate, no matter what type of leadership you will request, you request, you cannot waver away from your responsibility to God. We have a pact with God. We follow God's ways. God protects us. God is our shield, if you want to call it. We don't. The God is not there for you to protect you. You can't have it both ways. Whether your king is part of who you are. You don't follow, you will still get punished, whether you have a king or not. And regardless of what structure of leadership is going to take place, that does not clear your responsibility to God. And I think that's what Shmuel is placing it, and he works around again he ties it all the way from past history, all the way from Yaakov. He goes back to Egypt to recent times. I think he's clearing that, making that very clear for them not to think that now, who are they answerable? They're answerable to Shaul. No, you're not answerable to Shaul. There's no mention here. There's only mention a couple of times of the people and the king are answerable to God. In other words, Shaul is clearly also the one who's going to act on God's behalf as well. He's not above the law, so to speak, to place whatever he wants. And then the people will just say, listen, we listen to what this guy says. God, speak to Shaul, speak to our king, punish him, maybe, like whatever, whatever, but we're his subjects. No. You have this structure. You're still in exactly the same position in terms of what you are supposed to do. And that is follow God. And I think it's a beautiful way that you see in terms of Shmuel speaking to the people in it's almost like kids, where we warn our kids, don't, if you don't do this, I'm gonna punish you, and what, this and that, and at the end, at the end of the day, you grab your kids and you say, I love you, that I'm doing this because I want you to succeed, and Mom, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school, Dad. I don't want. No, yes, you're gonna go because, and then later on, as they understand and we force them to do whatever it is to learn, and sometimes it's they're not enjoying it, or if it's lahavdil, if it, they have an ailment and they have to, you have to take this pill or something that doesn't taste good, because we're doing it because we love them, because that is what is secure. And Shmuel, as he's getting older, he's trying to finally get that message. Unlike, I think, any of the shoftim that have been beforehand, which did mention it, but they were there. It was almost very light. Shmuel has this really intrinsic responsibility to the people, and he feels it. It's a very, very paternal relationship that he has with his people. I think up until now, the only person who showed this quality was really Moshe, that he takes the people he cries out before God, and Moshe has a little has that direct line with God where he's speaking. Shmuel sees visions and speaking, but he has also that concern as children of God. It's I don't know if you read it the same way or you see it the same way, but it's the first time from the characters that we've read that really are not only just following God and they understand, but see their stuff, like trying to speak to them, like, what don't you get, and really rebuke them, but shows them love at the same time, which is a beautiful thing. Does anybody else see it the same way that I do?
Well, I kind of see something here in Deuteronomy somewhere. There's something like this. I remember, or somewhere, where God says, if you're good, if you follow my rules, this is what'll happen, and if you don't, this is what'll happen.
So
And it
that
feels
happens in
that
two.
way here.
So that happens in Leviticus at the end, Bechukotai, and it also
Yeah,
happens,
that's
you're
right.
right, and it happens towards the end of the Torah as well. It's called the Tochacha, which is where you're right, God, tells them, like if you follow my laws, all good will happen. If you don't, all this, bad things will happen. But I'm talking about in terms of but the way that Moshe watches over the people is like a very, very parental like, not just like a leadership of this. And he says, Noach, for instance, if you look at the leadership of Noach just followed what God was saying, and that is it. He didn't question necessarily God, but he didn't do beyond. He never asked, how are you killing all the people? What's gonna, can't they do? He never. He's actively, Moshe was active in fighting for his people, fighting for his Shmuel here, although not to the same degree, but has that type of relationship with the people, where he's not only rebuking them, but bringing them in as well at the same time, and then warning them very clearly, but then telling them this is the secret. He's really in a parental like manner, and I find it beautiful, and you're going to see also this type of relationship that is created, as I mentioned, between the prophet and the king. There is this beautiful relationship that will always be occurring, and we will see it as we go through the different monarchs. But it's a beautiful thing. Like I said, it's something that even till today, when we see Jewish leaders, it's not just people who are necessarily like brilliant, smart, or well educated, well rounded, or speak well, or have, but they really care about their constituents, if I can say that. It's not always, but that's Jewish leaders today. That's what they have. It's not just that they give off halacha, but they literally take care of their communities, and it's a beautiful. That's part of intrinsic of what our leadership quality. One of the qualities was, which is important, and that is why who we are and how we are, and why we feel certain things when I think leadership also fails us. That's the best way of saying it. Any other comments, questions?
Yossi, what was the purpose of invoking the wrath of God in the demonstration of thunder and rain on the day of the wheat harvest? What point was he making by?
So during the wheat and harvest, it doesn't
Right.
rain, it doesn't thunder. In other words, the dry season, right? That's when it's growing. That's when they harvest it. So it would be in towards the end of summer, right?
No,
Or-
the question is, why would he need that sort of demonstration of some natural phenomenon to tell the people trust in God and what he's capable of doing for you?
So twofold. Number one, to demonstrate to the people who has rain and thunder is what in the olden days, without that, your economy was shot. If you didn't get rains, if you didn't get if your crops didn't get what it needed. So number one, it was very clearly demonstrating to the people your well-being is held by whom? Look, I'm gonna demand it now, and God brings it. So number one, that he's demonstrating that the God that he's referring to has that ability. Do you see it that way? In other
Yeah.
words, it's not just it's some other. The God that they're referring to, Adonai, is the one who does that. Second, it's as a witness to make his point. This shall happen if hopefully you'll never forget this. What I'm trying to tell you, the lesson, by demonstrating something great with it. So I think it's both for memory as ingraining that the message that he's saying, plus also demonstrating this is all for your, you're gonna cry for success, it's all ingrained. This is who's gonna give you the your how do you call it? Your sustenance, what you need. It also, by the way, is reference, if you look at it in the greater thing a little bit, as I mentioned in the Shema. I will give the rains in the right time, in its season. And then if you, all those words that I mentioned to you before, and it sounded like the Shema, and the rain is also mentioned in the Shema. It almost has a very similar structure to the Shema. It's a multi-leveled reason why he did it. It's also a section, like I said, something that they would have known. The Shema is something that they would have been very familiar with. So these are not just words that they're choosing, and we can say, "Oh wow, look, it does sound like them." For them, it sounds like it's lingo that they know and understand, that they can put in perspective. Great point, Chaim. Thank you. Anybody else? Did somebody have a question?
Just want to point out that perhaps in today's day and age, we could look back and appreciate the wisdom of our forefathers in the sense that here is a situation where Shmuel is telling the people, says, there's only one king, and that's your God. If you are asking for anybody else to take the burden off you, you're barking up the wrong tree. And today, instead of kingdoms or monarchies, we still exist. We go for democracy, oligarchy, whatever. The situation can be very well applied. We vote, we hope they'll come in, and if they do come in, great, they'll take care of it. But not so simple.
Yeah.
They take care of it without morality, without the right approach, without the fear of God. Things are not so great. So anyway, it's interesting to know how you can possibly apply it today.
Yeah, no, that's basically, Stephen, you hit the nail right on the head. Like this, it's an eternal lesson. It's not that an ancient thing. This is really our guide. And when we fall off the path, and then we say, why and how, and we have the secret, when I'll use this as when I'm sitting with a bar mitzvah student, and usually my first lesson, and we're talking about what it's all about, etc. And then I'm saying, what is expected of you. I go in, I reach into my drawer, I open my drawer, and I pretend like I pull something, and I actually pull up nothing, and I go, open your hand. They open up their hand, and I drop this. I go, what's that? It goes, it's nothing. I go, right. I go, I don't have a special pill for you that if you take it, you'll know your bar mitzvah. You at the end of the day, you have to put your tuchus on a chair, you have to review, sing, we'll read, we'll review, and we'll learn, etc. If I had a pill that I can give somebody, what fun would that be for everybody? Everybody, what you want to be a doctor? Here, take this pill, be a doctor. You want to today you want to be here. The whole point is that we put in our effort, we put our time. There's a way of, and you're following a certain way of guideline, you'll know it. You don't follow it, guess what? You're not going to know it. And it's the same thing also with us. We're following a certain path. That is what is determined for us. This is what we're supposed to be doing. We don't, then we have risks that are involved in following that as well. So, Stephen, point well made.
Very nice summary for the lesson. Very good.
Thank you. So just so you should know, if you want, I'm sorry, but I really don't have that pill. But if anybody wants to work with me on one, I'd be very happy to try to formulate one.
So thereabout.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Wishing
you.
everyone Shavua Tov.
Thank
Okay?
you.
All the best, everyone.
Good. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.